Sunt Iolanta Mura și din nou Business Insider. Astăzi avem un oaspete care este pentru prima dată în Republica Moldova și noi nu am ezitat să-l invităm la noi în platou. Este vorba de un speaker internațional, un coach de talie mondială, Allan Kleynhans. Este trainerul principal din echipa lui Tony Robbins și astăzi vorbim cu el. Hello, Allan.
Hey, Iolanta.
Welcome to Chișinău.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for accepting my invitation.
Thank you for having me.
How was your morning? Did you wake up at 6 a.m. as usually?
I woke up at 6 a.m., yes.
And
But I didn't get out of bed this morning.
but
because it was actually 4 a.m. for me.
The time zone difference. But what did you think and what did you say when you woke up? Tell us.
I said, good morning, it's great to be alive. Today is my favorite day. Thank you, I'm blessed.
For how many years you do this?
19 years.
Why so? Give us the trick.
Because 19 years ago, I decided to take my life in a different direction. I made some important decisions and I heard somebody say, today is my favorite day. And this particular person is a trainer and a financial trader and somebody who teaches wealth and somebody I look up to. His name is Chuck Mellon, fantastic guy. And I was sitting in his class and he said that every morning he wakes up, he says, today is my favorite day. He said, today is the only day we have. And I said, I like that. Because most of us are trained to look forward to Wednesday, which we call hump day, which is downhill to Friday. And then we celebrate Friday because we celebrate 2 days off. You know, it's our weekend. And I like the idea that he celebrated every day as today. And he didn't really give any day a name, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so I decided to absorb that and adopt that mantra. And then I added a little thing, a few other things to it, you know. So, and then every morning I say it, you know, I just made a habit of saying it every morning.
But you advise other people to say something in the morning?
I do encourage people to say things out loud when they wake up in the morning because we are unconscious most of the time. So as soon as we wake up, we automatically begin thinking about the stuff that we didn't do yesterday or the stuff that we haven't done yet.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So we don't live in the present because we automatically think about what we still have to do or what we haven't done yet, and then we just automatically go into this unconscious dialogue in our mind. So if you can speak out loud, it makes you conscious, and then you can be present and you can really pay attention to what you're saying. And then usually you will say something that's uplifting if you speak out loud. Most people will not talk to themselves negatively. So it's a good way of just overriding your unconscious dialogue.
To be present right here, right now, actually, I heard from other speakers about this too. Like David Allen was right in this chair in November last year,
Wow.
and he was saying exactly the same.
Very cool.
And you saying exactly the same. Why is so important to be present right here, right now, and how it changed your life?
Well, I mean, the great teacher Eckhart Tolle says the same thing in The Power of Now, you know. And I think he's not the only one, and like you said, David Allen is not the only person either, and people have been saying this since the beginning of time. Lao Tzu said this 5,000 years ago, you know. Jesus Christ spoke about it, Muhammad spoke about it, Buddha spoke about it, Gandhi spoke about it. And it's about just being present in the moment, because this is the only moment we have. And what happens is we have this unconscious dialogue that never ceases. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of your life. So it's all the time. And we learn to do this as soon as we start processing information from a young age and we start to use language. Then we start learning how to speak to ourselves in our own minds, and that becomes chatter all day. It's non-stop noise, what you can call white noise. And if you can practice being present in the moment right now, then what happens is that noise ceases, it slows down. And if you consider the average person has between 60 and 90,000 thoughts passing through their mind every 24 hours, that's a lot of noise. So if you can whittle that down to 6,000 to 9,000 thoughts, that's a whole lot more space in your mind. And the more you can practice being more present, the more space you have in your mind. And when you have space, you can be inspired by ideas.
And you were inspired by a book?
Well, it was 1988, and I was in a particular, I wasn't in a great place. You know, I had just come out of the military. I'd been out in the military for about 6 months, and I was on an emotional roller coaster. I was angry a lot of the time, and I was depressed a lot of the time. I was diagnosed as bipolar. Luckily, my mother did not subscribe to that. She didn't believe that. She just, she understood without really knowing what had happened to me that I had been through a tough time. And it was July of 1988 that I bumped into a good friend of mine, and he encouraged me to read this book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. As he was also in the military with me, and he knew what I'd been through, and then he said to me, he said, you need to take control of your thoughts and the way you think about this experience and how you process this event. As he told me that if you process the event, if you don't process it effectively, then the event will get the better of you. And you may end up like a lot of military veterans end up, which is committing suicide. And so he said the best way to learn how to process the information in a different way is to read this particular book, Think and Grow Rich, because it will introduce me, as he told me, it would introduce me to how the mind works and how we think and how we can make decisions and how we can use emotional processes and how we can turn a past experience of adversity into a gift. And so I became a reader in July of 1988.
But you became a reader. You read a lot of books.
Since then, yes.
But afterwards you said that knowledge is not everything.
No, knowledge is not power, is what I say.
Is not power.
Yeah. And I always ask that question, and I will ask the same question tomorrow to the audience. How many people? How many of you think knowledge is power? And most people put their hand up because we've all been duped into that myth or that phrase, knowledge is power. In fact, you see companies, running marketing slogans and marketing campaigns on this particular phrase. I've seen it many times, but it's not true really, because I like words and I like the dictionary. I like looking up the root of words, the Latin root word, etc. And if you look up the word power in the dictionary, it means the ability to act. So it literally says the ability to do or act. And so power means taking action, and knowledge doesn't lead to action. Knowledge will give us gives us the foundation of how to learn something or how to know something or how to do something. But doing something and knowing something are two different things. And we all know what to do, but we don't do what we know. And that's the challenge that we face every day, individually and collectively.
But action is power, was said by Tony Robbins.
Yes.
Why Tony Robbins? You graduate from Tony Robbins Academy and also from the Master University.
Yes.
I know you have met a lot of brilliant people in your life. Why you choose Tony Robbins, and why now you are top trainer in the Tony Robbins team? Well,
thank you very much for that lovely accolade. I wouldn't say that's quite accurate. I'm not the top trainer. I'd like to believe I'm one of the top trainers, but there's quite a few trainers who would probably put themselves at the same level, and because it's a very high standard within that.
I try to make some advertisement for you.
Thank you.
You're very honest.
It's a very high standard that we all have to adhere to there. But your question is a good one. I've had many teachers, including my own parents, including my teachers at school, which most of them I never really listened to because I wasn't academic. However, when I came across Tony's work in 1990 for the first time, which is when I bought his book for the first time, his first book, Unlimited Power, it really impacted me because it was my very first introduction to neuro-linguistic programming. And I'd never heard of it before that. And so it was a fascinating insight into how the brain works and how we process information and how we access information in our mind, whether we visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. And we all have access to these 5 senses. And we also talk about a 6th sense, which is your intuition. However, most of us never really get into that until we actually begin to inquire and ask much bigger questions. But Tony impressed me because when I saw him live for the first time, his energy, I already had a sense of his energy on the cassette tapes that I was listening to for the previous 9 years. Between 90 and 99, I'd been listening to him on cassette. And by that stage, I'd read his other book too, Awaken the Giant Within, and Notes from a Friend. And so I was already impressed with his skill set and his ability and what he had achieved in his own life at a young age. But when I saw him live for the first time, his energy was incredible. And my energy, I've always had a lot of energy. My challenge has always been when I was younger is that my energy was very dispersed and very erratic. And so what Tony taught me is how to channel that energy and direct it, and to direct it into whatever it is you want to create. So he's definitely not my only teacher, but he's definitely, I would say, he's had the biggest impact on me because his work has really helped me to change my life in a massive way, really. And so when I came across his workshop, and I did it for the first time in 99, it had such a massive impact on my particular life at that particular time and how I was experiencing life at that time. And it was like a 180-degree shift in my life in a very, very short space of time, within the space of 4 days. And people say, well, how can your life change in 4 days? It can, definitely. And I've seen it in my life. I saw it on that weekend 19 years ago, and I've seen it many times since then. The difference is that when I came out of that program, I had already made the decision to go to Master University, as you mentioned, and I'd already made the decision to study everything that Tony taught. So after Master University, I went to Leadership Academy, and then I entered the leadership program. And what I did was I practiced every single day what I learned on that workshop in those first 4 days in 1999. I practiced it every single morning for 90 minutes. And I carried it around with me. I kept referring to it. I kept using it all the time. And I think that's the difference really. And the first time I ever heard that phrase, knowledge is not power, was from Tony.
Yes.
And I used to believe that knowledge was power. I heard that many times. And then I heard Tony say, knowledge is not power, action is power. And it made so much sense to me. I thought, yeah, that's so true. Because by the time I got to that workshop in 1999, I had already been reading for 11 years. I'd already been studying for 11 years. I'd listened to many cassette tapes. I'd been on other programs. I'd been to other workshops. I had many other teachers before that. And I hadn't been putting any of that into action. And my life was still a mess, although I had a head full of knowledge. And I was very, very studious. And I discovered that I had a very good memory when I started reading Napoleon Hill in 1988. I discovered this amazing memory that I never had when I was 16 studying history, which my father used to remind me of often. So I began to practice and practice and practice. And then the more I practiced, the more I started to see changes. And I think that's the challenge that most people face. They go to a workshop and they don't practice what they learn at the workshop. And even if you just practice one thing continuously and consistently, that one thing can change your life.
How a person has to be chosen by Tony Robbins to be a trainer in his team. I know a lot of people are working for Tony Robbins. I look at the crew, there are plenty of people, medical team, fire team, people who welcome you at the door, and of course trainers. But I suppose not everybody can become a trainer, even though you graduate from his academy, right? So what skills or luck a person has to have to be chosen by Tony Robbins?
Well, you use the word luck, and I think luck, you make your own luck in life, And I like acronyms, and one of the best acronyms I ever heard from luck was luck is L-U-C-K, which is labor under constructive knowledge, right? And if you labor under constructive knowledge, which you practice every single day, you make your own luck. I think everybody can be a trainer for Tony. Anybody could be a trainer, but it really comes down to your attitude, your aptitude, and your diligence. So it's understanding Tony's work and being able to use it effectively with people. And you have to display that, you have to demonstrate that over a period of time. You have to show up. And you have to, really show that you have the attitude for it. And over a period of time, there's a process where you will continuously be monitored and trained, and then you have to keep displaying your skills. And then over a period of time, once you display the requirements, the necessary requirements, then you get promoted to trainer. And it depends on your own attitude really, and your own application of the process and how you apply yourself. That determines the time it takes. So some people it might take 3 years. Some people it might take 10 years. Really, it just depends how often you show up and how you apply yourself in that environment. You mentioned people, all those other people. Most of those people are volunteers. Tony obviously has an organization, and then he has the corporate organization and the people who work for him, the employees, and obviously those people will also play a necessary part. But a lot of those people that you mentioned, the fire team, the door greeters, the state inducers, the mic runners, the medical team, those are all volunteers, and they come from all walks of life, and they have all kinds of backgrounds. They're professional people. Many of them are doctors, many of them are accountants, lawyers. They keep showing up in that environment because they get so much value out of it. And it's an environment that does produce a lot of change, which is why Tony's still #1 in the industry after 43 years.
Why? Because the energy, or because what he's actually teaching?
It's because
what is the phenomenon of Tony Robbins?
The one single answer to that question would be because of the standard that he holds himself to. He holds himself to an exceptionally high standard. That's why he's an exceptional human being. He demands so much of himself in terms of serving other people, and his one goal has been, how can I serve people? That's been his mission his whole life. And he has a huge mission, which is to end suffering for human beings. That's his mission. And he wants to serve people in any way he can. So he holds himself to that standard every single day. Is how can I serve people at a higher level every single day? So when you have if that's driving you, and he's achieved remarkable things in his career, and he started achieving those things at a very, very young age, and he continued. He's continued in that vein for 43 years, and he's widely recognized as the best in the industry because he has that standard where he operates at a standard so much higher than other people.
I understand that, but our show is about the business, and I had a brief look over the Tony Robbins business.
Yes.
He has a holding with 40 companies,
Yes.
with the sales over the 5 billion
Yes.
per year.
Yeah.
So yes, he's doing charity.
Yes.
He's feeding people. He has this amazing project providing meals for people. At the same time, he's making money. So Tony Robbins, is this about helping people or this is about money?
Well, I think it's both really, right? Because I think you can only help people if you're successful. You know, there's too many people who are trying to help other people and they're not yet successful themselves. So then they do it from a place of resentment, or they get to a place, eventually they'll get to a place where they're feeling resentful. You've got to be able to serve yourself first. And success is all about that. You know, everyone has their own definition of success, but success really is being able to do what you want to do and help other people at the same time. So I think Tony is he's a great epitome of that. He's the ultimate epitome of that kind of success, where he's got to a place where he can help. You know, he can feed 400 million people this year with the help of Feeding America, and their goal is to feed 1 billion people. I mean, that's a big goal, right? To feed 1 billion people. I mean, you can't do that without a great team. You can't do that without resources. You can't do that with, you know, other people who are willing to get on board with your mission. And people will only get on board with a big mission if they identify somebody who has the ability to lead them in that particular direction. So he has that ability, you know, and we're all in business to make profit. Anybody who's watching this interview is in business will recognize that fact. That's the truth, right? That's why we're in business, is to make profit. But what we do with that profit is what makes the difference. Some people will keep their profit and not do anything with it. Other people will share their profit. And Tony's not the only person who does that. The world is littered with amazing people, men and women, who have achieved great heights and success and then shared their success and shared their money with other people and help people who are not so fortunate. And I think that's what Tony's foundation is all about, is how can we help people who are not so fortunate. And in order to do that, we need money to do it. So, business is business, but then really, it's about contribution too, right?
But success is about feeling fulfilled.
Yes.
So you advise people not only be successful, but to love what they are doing.
Yes.
Can you explain more accurate what it's about?
Yeah, sure.
And that research, which shows that there are a lot of heart attacks in the morning between 8 and 10 a.m. Yeah, Monday morning. I mean, is this real?
Well, the first time I ever heard that was from Dr. Deepak Chopra.
Ah.
And he said it's accurate. So, and he's not the only one who says it. And I think it's accurate because most people don't want to go to work on a Monday morning, Most people do not like their job.
They hate their jobs.
Yeah, they do. It's a fact, Apparently, the latest statistics, if you look at business, there's statistics everywhere, and people say, well, most statistics are made up on the spot, and I don't know how much accuracy there is in that. However, there is a statistic that says that 67% of any working force in any organization is currently looking for another job, or looking for a different avenue of income. So that makes, that's interesting reading if you think about that. And that means that any management team or any organization, most of their team is not happy where they are currently.
Yeah, like 7 people of 10 in your organization want to leave.
Exactly.
I used to have 500 employees. Oh my gosh, if I multiply, it's a huge amount of people.
So coming back to your question, my personal definition of success, the reason I say that, and obviously I've learned a lot in the last 30 years. I've been studying 30 years in July this year. So it's, I remember 30 years ago that I read Think and Grow Rich. And I wanted to be successful my whole life, since I was a kid. My father never owned his own business. My mother never owned her own business. They always worked for someone else. My father had 2 jobs his whole life. My mother had 1 job. She was an accountant for a big shipping firm, a massive organization, international company that's still very, very prolific in shipping goods around the world. And she worked for that company in South Africa. My father worked for a company that was involved in chemical engineering. And so their goal was to put me through a good education. But they hung around with people with money. Their friends were affluent. Their friends owned their own businesses, owned their own houses. We never owned their own property. My parents always lived in a flat. I've never wanted for anything. I was always grateful for, we had a good life. It was okay. However, I also, when I was growing up, I was exposed to wealth at a young age through my parents' friends. And so I had this idea when I was young that I was going to be rich by the time I was 20, by the time I was 30, by the time I was 40, etc. It took me until I was 40 to get to that point. But when I got there at 40, and I looked around and I had a beautiful house and I was living in South Africa and I had a 180-degree sea view. I played golf 3 times a week. I had fantastic clients. I was working with the Natal Sharks rugby team, one of the best sporting teams in terms of rugby worldwide. And I still wasn't happy, you know. I was making more money than I ever dreamed possible. In fact, every morning I would pinch myself because I couldn't believe it was true. And, but I still wasn't happy though. And it took me a financial challenge thereafter where, you know, I had to lose everything to recognize that happiness is an inside job. And so for me, success is about being fulfilled. You have to enjoy what you do. You have to feel like you're making a difference, I think. You have to be doing something that really inspires you to wake up in the morning and keeps you alive during the day. You know, really juices you up, gives you energy, and then puts a smile on your face, right? Because if you're not having fun, then something's wrong. If you can turn that into a good income, then you're blessed. And I think now we live in a day and age right now where this digital age, there's a lot of young people watching this program, and you know, they've got a fantastic advantage, you know, technology, digital. You know, you can actually do something today that you can make money in so many different ways now, and you can do it with something that really makes you happy and fills your heart with joy. And I think that's important. A lot of people don't have that opportunity right now because they're stuck in an old paradigm. But you can change, and I think that's the emphasis of this conversation, is that change is possible, really, in any area and at any time.
But a lot of people are afraid. They have fears. They have the main fear of failure. Mm-hmm. But you lost everything. You lost your family, your money. You were basically sleeping in a railway station.
Yeah,
and you said that this was the biggest bless of your life.
It was a blessing.
This sounds nonsense for a lot of people, in not only Moldova, in the world.
Yes.
How to explain it?
It would sound like nonsense for anybody who hasn't had that experience and is holding on to what they have for fear of losing it. However, if you talk to people who have been through that kind of experience, they'll all tell you the same thing. They'll all tell you that those times have turned into the greatest blessings of their life, because it's about processing that event or that experience in a different way and seeing the opportunity or seeing the gift. At the time, I was in a lot of pain, obviously, and my brain was telling me, I asked the question, and I tell the story. You know, I asked the question. I said, what can I be grateful for right now? I was sitting in the train station, as you said. I was very cold. I was too proud to pick up the phone and ask any of my friends for help and say, can I come and stay with you? Because I knew they would ask me questions, and I didn't want to answer those questions at that time because I just left my family, walked out of the house, left my children and their mother, and it was a conscious decision that I made. I was still not sure if it was the right decision at the time. I was all over the place emotionally. I was in a lot of pain, but I did ask myself the questions because I trained myself to ask those kinds of questions, and I'd been using those kinds of questions with all my clients. So I asked the same question: what can I be grateful for right now? And my brain said nothing. There's nothing to be grateful for. I'm in pain. You know, this is not good. I'm sitting in a station. It's cold. I've got nowhere to go. I did have somewhere to go. I could have picked up the phone and phoned and said, can I come and stay at your place? But as I said, I was too embarrassed or feeling too shameful to ask the questions that it would inevitably come. And so looking back though, when I came out of that, and I kept asking the questions until I got the answers I wanted. I kept asking the question over and over and over again. And if you keep asking a question with intention and with energy, and you look for the answer, the brain will come up with the right answer eventually. So I came up with the right answers. And then going through that and coming through that and looking at that, looking back now, I can say that was definitely a blessing, because it forced me to look at things that I hadn't looked at yet. It forced me to answer questions that I wasn't prepared to answer. You mentioned that the greatest fear that most people have is the fear of failure.
Yes.
That's true only partly. The reason that people are afraid to fail is because the greatest fear is the fear of humiliation. People hate being humiliated. And we've all had that experience as youngsters when we were growing up. We've been humiliated by people we love. We've always felt we've had embarrassing situations in our youth. And that is the ultimate fear for us. And being humiliated in public is what really scares people. So if we look at the way we live now, you know, in the social age, and it's goldfish bowl kind of living, you know, everyone's looking at our lives online. So people are always trying to portray their best life. And most people are afraid to let people see what's really going on, because that's the ultimate fear. What happens if people find out that I'm not really doing so well? Or what happens if they find out I made a mistake? What happens if they find out I cheated on my wife? What happens if they find out I took drugs when I was young? Or I did this when and I made this mistake? That's what people are really afraid of.
Why people caring so much about what other people are saying?
Because we always care what other people think about us, because we get a lot of our identity from other people. A lot of our own self-respect comes from the respect of others. So we feel that when people don't respect us, we lose respect in ourselves. And we have this thing, it's reared in us when we're very young, you know, because we rely on our parents when we're young We're dependent on other people for 18, 20 years of our life. And then still then after that, we still haven't really learned to be independent, especially about how we feel about ourselves. And that's our greatest challenge, really.
But about the humiliation, you also have a law of forgiveness. Can we use this law in the cases of humiliation when we were humiliated? Does it help?
Forgiveness?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. But forgiveness starts with yourself, really. You know, the idea of forgiveness is being twisted, where people feel that they need to forgive someone else. And so people find that very difficult because they usually...
I'm sorry, it's the hardest word.
Well, they usually say, well, I'll say sorry when they say sorry. We always put the emphasis on someone else. But really, forgiveness is what it does energetically. It releases you energetically from the other person. But it's really, it's a gift to yourself. When you forgive, you know, you give yourself the ability to go forward, really. That's what it's about. Because the inability to forgive someone else keeps you stuck in the past. So really, it's about you trap yourself, you know. And it's a very, very powerful thing to be able to do that. You know?
This is about forgiveness. And also, you said something about love.
You know, love is the most powerful human emotion that we know, right? It's you know, it's the source of every great love song. It's the source of every great piece of poetry, of every work of art, of every great building that you see around the world. You know, has always been inspired by love of some kind. And so love is something that we learn when we were very young. We learn that love is conditional. You know, our parents don't mean to do it to us. They're just doing the best they can with the resources they have. They've learned that from their parents, who learned it from their parents, etc. So it's passed down, that particular style of love. So if you're good, then I'll love you. If you're not good, then I'll retract my love. And we do it unconsciously without even meaning to. You know, we see it all the time when you see parents interacting with their children. It's not something we mean to do, because it doesn't mean that a parent doesn't love their child. You know, you never stop loving your child, but the way we behave using love, because love is an adjective, it's a verb, it's something that we do, right? It's something that we be, but we have to do it in order to experience it. So we've got to give it away. But we can't give it away effectively if we don't have it in ourselves, you know. So that really, you have a lot of people in a relationship, and usually most relationships are very resentful. You know, there's an underlying resentment there, because it's kind of like, how come you don't give me something back? You know, I'm giving you so much, but you're not giving me anything back. And that's the wrong way to go about it, really. So there has to be a shift in consciousness, and you have to give it to yourself, and you've got to give it to yourself every day, because, you know, nobody's going to come up to you, you know, and just come here and say, oh, come on, let me give you some love, right? You look like you need some love, right? People don't do that. So you've got to give that to yourself every day. You know, from the moment you wake up, you've got to acknowledge yourself, you've got to recognize yourself, you've got to look at yourself in the mirror and, you know, I would say admire yourself, but not from a vain point of view. It's nothing to do with vanity. It's really just, it's understanding that what you see in the mirror is a real gift, right? Your body is an absolute gift. The nervous system is a gift. The brain is a gift. Everything we have is a miracle, really, if you consider how it came to be, right? From this little seed has turned into this fantastic body. And we use this body every day. It's a vehicle. And so we don't respect it. And we got to respect it from a place of, you know, really loving ourselves and having compassion for ourselves and forgiving ourselves for our mistakes, and just understanding that we're all doing the best we can. If we can practice that on a daily basis, then it's just much easier to be kinder to other people, right? And kindness is something we all relate to. It doesn't matter what, what background we come from, what experience we've had in life, which God we pray to, what our religion is. We can all understand kindness. Everybody understands kindness. And kindness is something that we could all use more of in the world today, every day, every single day. And you can only be kind to somebody if you feel that internal state of love. You know, when people are lacking that, then that means they're in pain. The opposite of love is pain. And so when there's a lack of love, you have pain. And when people are present to pain, what they want to do with pain is want to give it away. They usually want to give it to the people that they love the most, because it's just easier to do that.
Let's have a break for personal questions.
Yes.
For a tea or a coffee or a cappuccino.
Okay.
We'll see. Hey guys, we have our coffee break for personal questions.
Yes, lovely.
And,
careful, babe.
Oh! It's okay, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I'm happy you both are here,
Yes.
you and your girlfriend. And I insisted to have both of you at this coffee break because I have some personal questions and I need some honest answers.
Yes.
So you're saying that you both having a great life together. despite the fact that you have exes, you both divorced, and you have each 2 kids from previous marriages. For your understanding, in Moldova, people think that it's no life after divorce, and they're trying to stay married, even if they're not happy in their marriages. So, what would be your advice? Is it a life after divorce, or even a happy life after divorce?
I think so, definitely, yes, for sure. I often encourage people, you know, I've worked with couples and people in relationships and people who are in marriages that are unhappy, and they're in the marriage for long periods of time where they're not happy, and I often encourage people to follow their heart, and sometimes their heart is telling them to leave that marriage. And I don't think you should stay in a marriage where it's unhappy, because especially if you have children, because you end up teaching your children to settle, you know, and when really you should be teaching your children to make the most of life. And you can't make the most of life if you're in a marriage where you're unhappy and you're not self-expressed, you know. So sometimes you will find yourself in a marriage like that, you know. And I don't think there's any point in staying in a marriage like that just for the sake of your kids, because you're teaching them the wrong model of relationship.
Do you think the same, Sharon?
Yes, I do. I think my children have learned a lot from me actually finding the courage to leave the relationship I was in, and it's actually served them better in a way, because they see the relationship that our father and I have, which is a very friendly, amicable, really loving relationship, because we both found happiness in our lives. So it teaches them to follow their heart and their truth, and to be happy with the decisions that they make in life.
I would agree.
I'm so happy for both of you and for your children, because you're still seeing them, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
You're taking care of them,
yeah.
and you're like a big happy family.
And we're both friends with our ex-partners.
Yes.
Well, you are in a good relationship.
Yes.
This is amazing. How it's possible to be in a good relationship with your ex? It's your ex, you know. Many people don't understand this. But hopefully it will be a good example for the people who are watching us. And now a very personal question, and my last personal question. I know that you were dependent on drugs, cocaine dependent actually. This is a very serious issue, and this was for years. When was it? For how long did it still? And how did you manage this issue?
Yeah, well, it started when I was young, in terms of, you know, with marijuana, etc., and then it was alcohol, and then it was harder drugs, you know, ecstasy, etc. In the beginning, it's fun and games, you know. When you're young, you're just experimenting and you're having fun. But as I got older, and I felt more empty, and I was having my own challenges, psychological challenges, emotional challenges, I became more dependent on substances to make me feel better about myself. And it got to the point where I couldn't really interact socially without being high, because if I was sober, I was in my head all the time, and I was concerned about what other people thought about me all the time, and I was, you know, I had lots of voices in my head, etc. It was very noisy in my head, and so it got to the point where I just couldn't really function, you know, socially without being high. And it got to the point where I was using cocaine on a daily basis, and it got to the point where it was very, very destructive, you know. And for a long time, I didn't really want to face that fact, you know. I didn't really. I knew that it was, and I was having the conversation with myself for a long time, and I would have it often, but it was such that I was in an environment where it was conducive to that, and it was just easily available, and I was, you know, in an environment where everyone was doing it, so it was harder to break out of that at that point, until I got to the point where I was in so much pain, really emotional pain, that I just thought I had to make the change, you know. And so I removed myself from that environment, and I stayed away from it for an extended period of time, a long time. And it made the biggest difference to me, you know. So it allowed me to stop doing that. And yeah.
This was a long time ago. This is basically
this was in the
when
90s.
you started to change your life.
Yeah, well, the late 90s, I was in a bad way in the late 90s, where I got to the point where I was suicidal, and I was using just to get through the day, really. I was using, you know, just to get through the week, and I was just. Each day was a challenge, you know. Just to every morning I'd wake up, I'd think, oh my God, how am I going to get to the end of this day? You know, I've got to go and work 12 hours, you know, in an environment that I'm not enjoying, in a job that I was not enjoying, and I just wasn't enjoying life, you know. It was a really tough time, and what helped me to get through that was the fact that I would get high, you know, because when I was high, then my problems went away, you know, and I had this false sense of confidence, you know, and this false sense of happiness, really, you know. But then it goes away quickly, you know, and then when it goes away, it's even worse. And then you got to, you know, the next thing you do is, okay, how can I feel it again? Let me get high again, you know. And so it's up and down, up and down, up and down. But you can only do that for so long until you eventually burn out, or you do something even worse, which is what a lot of people do, is they overdose, or they, you know, they take their own life, really. And I was in that paradigm. I was having those thoughts on a daily basis, you know.
So I think it's a real success story, because it's quite hard to do that, and you should be proud of this. But what I understood from your story, that if a person is really happy and fulfilled, that person doesn't need drugs or any other stuff to help.
Well, I think when you're happy and fulfilled, and I know Sharon will also concur with this, because she's also a coach, an intuitive coach. When you're happy and fulfilled, then you will find joy in the small things. You know, you find joy in the smile, in a smile, you know, on a child's face, or in the smile of your lover, or you'll look outside and you see trees, you know, and you know, nature will make you happy. You know, the experience of life makes you happy when you're in a great place.
Thank you so much for answering honestly to my questions, and happy to have both of you here in Chisinau. And let's go back to business.
Lovely.